Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Bowling University studio from the International Bowling Campus here in Arlington, Texas. I'm Bart Berger, and I'll be your host for this edition of the Bowling University Tuesday Morning Profit Break. Thank you for joining us. The Tuesday Morning Profit Break is an opportunity for sharing insights on how to grow revenue, reduce cost, and enrich yourself, your team, and your business. Welcome to our new viewers, and welcome back to those of you joining us again. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your busy day to join us. We have another great show ready to share with you today. Grab your coffee or your favorite morning beverage, and let's get started improving your profitability. Today, we have with us from the Bowling University team, Mr. John Karabatsis, or JK as we affectionately refer to him here at the campus. John is a 30-year veteran in the industry, and quite candidly, if I read to you all his credentials, we would be at the end of another episode. But I would like to point out that JK did serve as the National Food and Beverage Manager for Brunswick Recreation Centers, where they own and operated 100-plus bowling centers with all different type of business models for several years. So he has experience with all type of businesses in the bowling space and all type of business models, and we're fortunate to have him on our team and fortunate to have him with us today. So this morning, JK is going to spend a few minutes discussing the critical topic of prime cost management, understanding exactly what prime cost is, how to calculate it, and most importantly, to help our profitability, how to improve it. So thank you, JK. Thank you for joining us and speaking on this critical topic.
Thank you, Bart. Thanks for that nice introduction. Good morning, everybody. So as Bart mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about profitability in your snack bar or your food service operation today. So whether you operate a traditional center or a bowling entertainment center or a family entertainment center, food and beverage is becoming a larger and larger component of that overall guest experience, and by extension, a larger and larger part of your profitability. So it makes sense to understand how to manage that profitability. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Typically, you can look at a food and beverage operation, and this is how the expenses get divided up. 25 to 35% of product cost, then you have the labor cost, which is generally in the same area dependent on the model, and then everything that's left, supplies, repair and maintenance, utilities, et cetera, is that. So your profitability after those expenses is really driven by several things, in your brand, the way you run your center, your organization. What's your culture, how your leadership establishes that culture is critical to your profitability. What type of hiring practices and standards do you have? Are you consistent throughout your management team? The training. Do you take training seriously? And do you do it frequently? And do you do it thoroughly? Okay, how do you schedule your staff? Are you proactive in your scheduling? Are you reactive? What style of service do you have? Are you more of a counter or are you more of a restaurant style? Your menu and your menu mix is important too. What is your menu like? Is it a complicated menu? Do you have a lot of options on there? Or is it relatively simple? And then within that menu, what do you sell? Are you selling a lot of the low-cost items? Or are you selling a lot of the higher-cost items that actually may be more profitable? How are you priced? Are you priced appropriately for your brand and your market? And then what kind of systems do you have in place for that operation, like inventory control, ordering, receiving, your waste practices, etc. So all of those are going to play a major role in how profitable you are. So wouldn't it be great, okay, if we had take these two expenses, and which we're going to talk about today is product cost and labor cost. Those are the two big expenses that you have in your food and beverage operation. So wouldn't it be great to have a tool to help you manage those expenses, your revenue and your profit goals? What goes on your menu and what comes off your menu, what you charge for those items, how do you manage your inventory, and how you schedule your team. So there is a tool to help you with that, and it's a relatively simple one, and it's called prime cost. And it looks at those two large expense areas that we just discussed, cost of goods and your labor. Cost of goods sold as opposed to just your general cost of goods is the important tool to look at here. So we're looking at cost of goods sold, all of your labor, which means hourly, salaried, and taxes. So there's an example on your screen. You can say in this example we did $50,000 in revenue because your prime cost is a percentage, so it's a function of the revenue that you do. In this case, our cost of goods sold was $16,000, so that's 32% cost of goods. And then our labor, again, you have to divide it up. Everybody who's working within that food and beverage operation goes in here, and all the expenses for that labor go in here. So hourly, in this example, we had $9,000. We have $2,500 worth of salaried expense that works in there, payroll taxes, benefits, etc. All of those have to be calculated out. Most of it's really easy to find. Typically, after you do it once, especially on the taxes and the benefits, usually you can just use that percentage. So you add all these up, and there you have your prime cost. For this example, our prime cost was $30,000. You divide that by the $50,000, and that gives us 60%. That's all there is to the calculation. That's it, simple as that. So, but what does that mean? At this point, it doesn't mean anything. So what's a good number for us to have? In the food and beverage or the restaurant industry, most restaurants will try to operate below 60%. That will make sure that they have enough profit left over to pay their bills and pay their people and have a good money in the bank moving on. In our industry, we could probably go a little bit higher because of the way we're structured, but certainly no more than 65%. So when you combine these two, if you're getting above 65%, you're getting into dangerous territory there. That means you don't really have enough left over to pay the rest of your expenses, pay your employees, and improve your business. If you get under 55%, potentially that's dangerous too, depending on your style of service, because that could mean that your pricing's too high, your costs are too low, maybe you don't have enough labor. So it's not necessarily a good thing to be too low. Okay, so if you can operate in that range, 55 to 65, and ideally 60%, maybe a little bit lower, works great. You should be making a profit in your food and beverage operation. So it's a really easy way to calculate that. So once you know your target, okay, what's the right number? I talked about payroll and I talked about cost of goods. What should it be? What's the right target for me? Well, the answer is it depends. So there really isn't an answer. You have to figure that out for your organization, for your brand. It all depends on how complex your menu is. Again, are there a lot of items on it? What's the quality of the product? In other words, is a lot of it frozen, so it's easy to prepare and serve, or is it fresh made? Do you have a full kitchen back there where they're putting the components together? That's going to cost more. So your cost of goods is probably going to be lower because you're going to charge a higher price for it. Sales mix, what are you selling? Are you selling a lot of high-cost items or are you selling a lot of low-cost items? That's going to determine what your cost of goods is for your whole menu. How are you priced? I mentioned about the quality of the product. If you have a good quality product, you're going to charge more for it. If it's not, if it's more quick serve, you're probably going to charge less and run a higher cost of goods. The style of service is going to be a big determiner in your labor hours. So if you have that counter service where it's quick serve, you're probably not going to have as much labor. Where if you have that kitchen, you have to prep it, you have to serve it, you're going to bring it out, you have more labor. Okay? So what hours are you open? What hours are you not open? Are you looking at that? Are you open the right amount of time and when you should be? How often do you compare that to what your actual revenues are? And then the labor that's required, as I mentioned, for those different models. So all of that's going to roll into what the right target number is for you. So if in this case 60% is the goal that we picked, so here's all you need to do. If it's 60%, if your labor is 30%, then your product cost can't be any more than 30. If your labor is 25, then your product cost can't be any more than 35. If it is, and you don't meet your target, you don't meet your goals, you have to go back, figure it out. How can I reduce my payroll? How can I reduce my cost? Whatever you do, don't hurt the guest experience. You've got to figure out a way to make it happen and still maintain your target. If you're not keeping your guests happy, it doesn't matter what your target is, they're not coming back. So keep that brand experience going, but work within your targets. So remember, there's no right ratio. It's going to depend on who you are, but that prime cost target and you monitoring it is going to drive everything. Okay, so how do you manage it? Once you have your targets, how do you manage it? How do you monitor it? There's things that you have to do first to be able to do that. So you should already have costed out all of your menu items. Every item on your menu has to be costed out. You have to know what it costs you, each and every ingredient, and you have to keep it up to date. You have to have a standard recipe. That's important. Know what the theoretical cost is as compared to an actual cost of goods. So your actual cost of goods sold is what's driving this prime cost, not what it should be costing you. Should be costing you says nothing wrong is going to happen. It's, no waste, no theft, nothing. Cost of goods sold is the important metric here. Okay? Don't forget, profit beats cost of goods. So the lower cost doesn't necessarily mean more profit. When you look at your menu, you want to make sure that you are making as much money as you can while still maintaining that guest experience. Okay, your brand and your market appropriate pricing, have you looked in your market? Are you appropriate for what you're delivering to your guests and what your market will accept? Or are you just copying the guy down the street who may not know what he's doing? Okay? Set your daily, your weekly target sales and labor in advance. So you have to start forecasting. What am I expecting this week? Then what can I afford for payroll to manage and be in 30%? Okay? Set those targets. And then you need to review your sales, review your labor daily, weekly, and then react. If you missed it, which is going to happen, how do you change it? The sooner you get to changing it and reacting, the less you're going to lose. I'll say it that way. Okay? So monitor your prime costs weekly, monthly, and quarterly, as well as annual. You want to stay on it. Don't let it get ahead of you, because once that money's gone, it's gone. It's not coming back. Okay, so let's start thinking a new way with food and beverage. If you're really food focused, you're already doing this. But start thinking the way some of the restaurant operators, most of them do. Okay, set those targets, manage your prime costs, and that's going to increase your food and beverage cost just by spending more time in doing that. So stay on target, be proactive with your labor management and monitoring your food costs. Make sure your menu mix, your proper inventory control, you're hiring the right way, your training, all of those are hugely important to your profitability, okay? So in closing, start thinking like those restaurant operators, and your food and beverage operation should be, it's a great component, a big component of the food and beverage experience and the whole experience of your brand, but it also should be a great source of profit and pride to your brand. Bart?
Thanks, JK. A lot of great information. And actually, as I was listening and thinking candidly back to my experience, it's been a few years in the F&B operation, why do you think it is in our industry that this term prime cost is not something that is very common? We don't use a lot, candidly.
It's more common in the restaurant industry, and I think our industry typically hasn't been food focused. But as it changes and as food becomes a bigger and bigger part of that guest experience, it needs to be a practice that we start believing in.
Yeah, and it feels like as we are coming out of the pandemic, we're on this road to recovery. Operators have a long list of things to do, and certainly this seems to be an important one. Where do you think this fits into the road to recovery?
You know what? It's so important as you're coming back to really make sure that your food and operation is efficient. So you have to look at your menu. You've got to see what you do best. Okay? Don't try to serve everything to everybody. What do you do best? Focus on fewer items that are quality, that you can control the training, the makeup, the delivery, the whole thing. Focus on fewer quality, more efficient menu, and then more efficient labor. So the less items you have, the more efficient you are, the less labor you're going to need to do that. And those two items fit perfectly into prime cost.
Yeah. And then I guess finally, since there's so many of us that are watching this, that maybe this is not something we're currently doing, and you have a lot of experience in this space, what can you share with us that maybe is like the top thing, the top mistake that you see operators do when they get started down this road of prime cost management?
Sticking with it. Not being thorough. When I ran centers, I didn't do this, okay? So it's something I had to learn over time because there's so much going on, and everybody's like, somebody, if not that leader, somebody in there has to be responsible for developing this stuff, developing the recipe guide, making sure those costs are always updated. And then you as a leader are probably all over the payroll. So you bring those two together. It's just a matter of spending the time, understanding how significant it is and important it can be, and then spending the time to do it, or to get the right person to do it for you.
Thanks. Great stuff. Thanks again, JK, for that great information. And I would like to remind all of you, we've shared a lot of information with you in a very short period of time. So if you or your team members or anyone would benefit more from this topic, we have an incredible 30-minute course at our on-demand online training program available at bowlinguniversity.net. So as we wrap up another edition of the Tuesday Morning Profit Break, remember that when your focus is on growing people, people will grow your business. We look forward to seeing you next week at 10:15 Eastern for another great episode of the Tuesday Morning Profit Break. If you have any question about today's episode or would like to contact information, JK or anyone here from the team, you can reach us anytime at education@bpaa.com. Also, if you or your team, you can watch any of our previous episodes 24/7 by visiting us here at bowlinguniversity.net. Until then, I'm Bart Berger, and remember, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. See you next week.